Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful Muscle podcast. We have our first guest in this new podcast, Jody. Let's get this show rolling.
This is my very good friend, Maggie. Maggie is an amazing human being. She's one of my favorite people in the world. She was one of the few people who knew me before my transformation journey, and she remained a supportive friend during, and she's one of my favorite people. She's just happy and amazing. So I can't wait for you guys to hear her story.
So, how are you doing today?
You guys doing?
Can't complain.
Fantastic.
Glad to have you as our first guest. You have an amazing story, at least from my standpoint. Jody knows you
Oh.
best, but give us a little
Mhm.
background before we dive into the particulars of your story.
Sure. So when I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed type 1 diabetic. That kind of set the pace for me as far as certain restrictions. Food became the enemy. Insulin therapies were much different than they are now. So it was more, you have to eat this at this time. Straying from that, you'd get really sick. When I was a teenager, I was diagnosed with a genetic heart defect. It's a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that my father passed away from. So then that kind of put a wrench in the works as far as exercise. From my perspective, I kind of had, from one side, I couldn't do too much dieting because of diabetes. And then from the other perspective, things like fitness itself could be life threatening as well. When I was young, my doctors didn't think I was listening that much. So they wanted me to be scared of doing the wrong things. I took it upon myself to start doing the right things, not really knowing what they are, as like a fighting back. Learned more as I went.
I've seen you on Instagram. We know each other from the Fitbod Community group. You are thin and in shape. Was that always the case? Because I know with diabetes, sometimes a lot of people fluctuate in weight and stuff like that.
So oftentimes when people are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they're actually underweight because without insulin, your body can't get the proper nutrition, nutrients delivered to your cells. But I spent most of my life overweight. It kind of runs in the family. There's a lot of heavy people in the family. My mom grew up very thin. So I think that growing up, she didn't want her daughters to feel pressure to be overly thin. But after my son was born, he's now 13, I was diagnosed with a thyroid condition. My weight went up from there. I know everyone around me said, you were never that big, but I've lost 30 pounds and I put on a ton of muscle. It looks like I've lost more, but I've also packed on a lot of muscle. So, no, it was not always the case.
So tell us how you started. How long have you been working? What did you do? Tell me everything.
So, COVID hit. I had my daughter 3 days before we went into lockdown. She was born in March. That August, Jody posted pictures of her most current before and afters. I remember thinking, I know that I'm stubborn enough to have pictures like that. I spent so much of my life hating my body, preaching self love, but hating the way that I looked. I think I liked who I was as a person, but I really did not like how I felt in my own skin. I saw Jody's pictures, and that night I went online and signed up for Planet Fitness. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So it said you had to finish the process in person. So I went in at 4:30 the next morning, and I just told myself, I'm going to do something, and then, I'm going to keep going. And when I don't want to go anymore, I'm just going to keep going. So I first started out, I would pick a couple machines that I didn't hate. After a couple weeks, it's like, okay, I'm doing these 3 machines. Let me try something else. After a couple months, it's like, well, I never thought that I'd be consistently going to the gym for a couple months. So maybe I'll try a little cardio. And the elliptical was something that I liked. I was able to keep track of my heart rate. It was easy to slow down if I felt like I was doing too much. Somewhere along the way, I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos. Instagram's full of influencers now. So I kind of learned a bit more. About a year ago, I found my coach, Jason. He's also a type 1 diabetic. Of all of these coaches that I saw online, he was the one. I had spoken with a couple and I always asked, are they familiar with type 1 diabetes and heart patients? Because I have so many things that go into fitness and nutrition that most people don't have to think about. He was the first one that not only is he very well versed in type 1 diabetes, but he has it himself. So, I'm like, let's give this a shot. He helped me. I was doing a lot of the right things, but he helped me zone in on nutrition and figure out what my macros are, what works best for me as far as eating. He also gave me some structure with my workouts that I didn't have before. So where I was doing a bunch of the right things, he helped me put it together in a way that I was getting better results.
Okay. Hey, you said something there, and I hate to pick on you, Jody, because you shared your story. But Jody had a couple of starts and stops before her health scare set her straight. But you just
Mhm.
mentioned that you one day made up your mind and said you were going to stick with it. That's what
Yep.
I'm trying to capture. What triggered it? I know you just mentioned that, but what is it that just
I
clicked?
think COVID was a big catalyst for me. I've never really thought about that before. I had certainly started and stopped a few times. Now, my
Okay.
starts would last about 2 weeks and then I wouldn't feel like it and I'd make excuses. I never really liked dieting. It's better for me now because I don't consider it dieting. It's a structured way of eating. But for me, COVID, everything got kind of crazy. My son was in third grade. I had a brand new baby, and I was doing all of that. I had to handle the homeschool and the baby stuff. I think I just wanted something that was mine and only for me, something that would only benefit me. I think it was more of a distraction, but I'm really stubborn. When I set my mind to something, it's only on me to do it. I think something snapped that time. And I went into it thinking this is going to be another attempt where I go for a couple weeks and then I give it up. But let's push through and power through for as long as possible. And here I am still going.
I love it because there are so many moms that feel like if they take the time to prioritize their health, work on their fitness, that they're being selfish. But to me, I feel like we're stronger moms as a result, and
Yep.
we're a better example to our kids. We can't expect them to lead healthy lives if we're not showing them how to do it. So I
Yep.
think that's amazing.
I just saw a little Instagram influencer thing saying, don't talk to me about you being a woman 20 with no kids, no responsibilities, and you're trying to teach me about getting up to go to the gym at 5 in the morning. Show me a
Yep.
mother with kids, a job, a husband, responsibility, and still exercising. Then I will
Yep.
listen. And that's so important. So, how did you balance it all?
I would get up around 4 in the morning to get to the gym as early as
You women are
possible
crazy.
before. Right. Um, there was like a small window where my husband was, before he left for work. So that's what I would do. Planet Fitness was 24/7. So I'd get up at 4 in the morning, get there around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and just get in as much of a workout as I could in that small window of time.
Yeah, because between you and Jody, 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock. But the crazy thing is, look, if I had to get up at 4 to work out, I could do it. But that's because my gym is in my garage. If I had
Right.
to get up in a car and go somewhere, you girls are nuts.
Once it got a bit more taxing to get up early, I'm not the nicest to myself inside my head. My inner monologue, she's a bit mean to me sometimes, but that's how I function. So I started telling myself that I wasn't allowed to go to Dunkin' if I didn't go to the gym. I could take a route home where I would pass by my favorite Dunkin'. That was my little treat to myself, that I could go, but I could only feel good about it with my workout.
That's good. Eh? Whatever motivates you, right?
So what have your doctors said? Any of them?
They love it. I see a cardiologist. When I first saw him after I started going to the gym, I was so defensive right off the bat. I'm like, "You told me I can't do cardio, but I've been doing it, and you were wrong." He's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. You can do cardio. You just have to know what warning signs to look out for." So we talked about that. It's basically, if I feel like I'm going to pass out, don't keep going. My endocrinologist, she's thrilled as well. No one has said anything about, slow down or anything like that. It also has given me so much structure with my insulin. I'm aware of what my heart rate is doing while I'm doing different exercises. I'm aware of how different exercises are going to affect my blood sugar. I've been able to really zero in on what my insulin needs are rather than just depending on my insulin pump. When you're doing bulking phases, you have to eat more. You
Mhm.
can't just go through the motions. You have to know what you need in order to cover that much more carbs. So, yeah, they're thrilled. I'm like a walking stack of data to give them on all of my conditions.
Take me back to when you were a teenager and fully aware that you're type 1 diabetic. How frustrating was that? What issues did you deal with? Your friends are probably all getting pizza, eating
Yep.
Coke. So, how'd you balance that as a young adult?
There wasn't a whole lot of balancing it, especially my later teen years when I was out with my friends all the time. I wasn't really taking care of myself. For me to spend a whole day vomiting with my blood sugars high wasn't abnormal. It was only
Mercy.
abnormal if I buckled down, started checking my blood sugar after vomiting all day and then taking insulin the way I'm supposed to. If it still wasn't coming down, then I might be like, hey, mom, I think I have to go to the emergency room. I had a couple fainting episodes from high blood sugars. I had a couple hospital stays. You go to the hospital as a teenager with type 1 diabetes, then they also want you to stay until you can meet with the cardiology team. I think I felt invincible. The diabetes itself had become such a normal part of my life. If your blood sugars are running 300 all the time, that's really high, and that's going to cause different health complications. But your body gets used to what that feels like. So that 300 starts to feel really normal to you. And I remember when I did start buckling down and trying to get my numbers better in check, if I was like a normal range, like 100, I felt like my blood sugar was really low. So it was a long process trying to get back down into my early adulthood. But when I was 18 years old, I spent 3 separate weeks in the hospital. Twice were for what's called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is when you don't get enough insulin for long enough, your body can't process the sugar that's in your system and it spills out into your blood. That's what raises your blood sugar, and your blood starts to turn acidic. And without medical intervention, it will kill you. So the first week-long hospital stay when I was 18 was from diabetic ketoacidosis. The second week-long hospital stay was from a kidney infection. And then the third one, I spent a week in the ICU from diabetic ketoacidosis. And I still was thinking, like, this is so dramatic. Like, everybody's overreacting because I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't until when I was 20, I got pregnant with my son. I knew that having your blood sugars run really high, especially early into pregnancy, it can cause different birth defects. There was another person that was at risk if I didn't take care of myself.
When did you then start taking care of yourself with the diet? Was it at the onset of the pregnancy?
So when I was with both of my pregnancies, I did eat very healthy. I paid very close attention to my blood sugars. My being pregnant with my son helped me focus more on actually checking my blood sugars and, dosing my insulin based off of carb counts and my blood sugar. Let me see, when he was 3 years old, so that would have been 2014, that was when I got my first insulin pump. The insulin pump comes with a CGM. It's a continuous glucose monitor. So that'll tell you, as long as you have the sensor attached, it'll tell you what your blood sugar is doing all the time. So that made it a lot easier to see what my blood sugar is doing without actually having to check. And then I still checked all the time, but when it's staring you in the face like that you're having these fluctuations all day, it's like, okay, maybe I should pay a little closer attention. I'd say that was kind of the beginning of it, but it really wasn't until I started exercising regularly in 2020 that everything just started improving. My A1C was so much better. It's hard to have a perfect A1C when you're a type 1 diabetic. They say below 7 is ideal for a type 1 diabetic. And I'm like, why not closer to 5? That's like closer to a non-diabetic. Even my thresholds in my insulin pump, they automatically set it to 80 to 180. I'm like, let's set it to 80 to 150. I want it alarming before it's dangerously high. I want to know it's elevated when it starts to be elevated. I'm a bit obsessive with it, but that's my quality of life.
I'm fascinated.
So, what have your loved ones, your family, your friends said about all these changes you've made?
I know at first my mom was maybe not concerned, but I can only assume when you spend your life raising someone like me, I can understand that maybe you want to know all of the details of what I'm doing, especially health wise. I know at first she may have been concerned that I was eating enough and things like that. But being able to have that structure of tracking everything, it's like not only can I say I'm eating more than I ever have before, it's just better options. I can show it. I can show a chart of like, see, I can show you everything I ate 3 months ago. But then having the doctor's feedback, I think that helps as well. But overall, I have a great support system. We've talked in the body image Zoom calls. Everybody gets little comments sometimes where people, I don't think they mean to be insensitive, but they're not living the lifestyle, so they don't understand. But anyone close to me has only been supportive.
Okay. Coming to the fact that you're working out and you said it's helped you balance your health. How often do you eat as a type 1 diabetic? Are there restrictions? Tell us about that because
So in theory, there's no real restrictions on a type 1 diabetic. You just have to take insulin for any carbs that you eat. I tend to eat about 2 meals a day with maybe a light snack instead of lunch. After
Mhm.
dinner, I fast overnight. Post workout is always my biggest meal. So that's where I try to get the bulk of my carbs for the day. It's always been easier for me if I stay lower carb. It's just easier to keep my blood sugars stable because you're not having those same fluctuations. But it also just kind of works for me as a person. If I get most of my carbs post workout, then I don't have to take as much insulin because I'm still burning off some of those carbs from working out. And then dinner tends to be a lot of protein, a lot of veggies. And then in between, I'll have yogurt and cottage cheese. That's filling to me. So that works for me. It helps if I stick to some sort of regular plan with my eating. It only helps my insulin pump work more effectively. I was never told that I have to do that, but I see the trends and it's less work for me if I eat a lot of the same things. So I don't have restrictions, no, but for me personally, I prefer a very structured eating plan.
I was just curious because I'm more familiar with type 2 diabetes, and I guess
Yes.
it's probably the same in how the blood sugars go up and down. I was just wondering if under type 1 you had quicker lows because your body's not producing
So
any
so
insulin.
type 1 is an autoimmune disorder, so your
Hmm.
body attacks the insulin producing cells. You end up not making any insulin. So, insulin, that's what you need to process
Hmm.
sugar and carbs. Type 2, it's almost like it's more difficult for your body to process those carbs. You typically a type 2 would still produce some amount of insulin,
Yeah.
but maybe it's not enough or it doesn't work as effectively. Type 2, I know that there's tons of factors that go into it, but oftentimes it's lifestyle based. So if you
Hmm.
change the way that you're eating, if you eat better foods, then you could even cure your type 2 diabetes with diet and exercise. For a type 1, growing up, I was asked frequently, do you have the good kind or the bad kind? And I didn't know how to answer that because
Yeah.
type 2, you could get rid of it, but type 2, you're already sick when you're diagnosed. So I consider me to have the good kind. I'm not unhealthy because of it. But yeah, it's kind of the similar disease, but I think they should have a different name for type 1 and type 2 because most people know something about type 2. They know people who have type 2 and will offer unsolicited advice to the type 1s in the world.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up. And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't know that most type 2 diabetes, you just got to find out what's triggering it and you can
Yeah.
almost change it and reverse it. How'd you come across that knowledge? Because a lot of people don't know that.
I think I learned the most about type 2 just from people offering their own insight. These days, weight loss has become so trendy that, not everybody,
Yeah.
but, things like Wegovy and Ozempic, it's so easy to just, oh, it's a treatment for type 2 diabetes. So you lose weight and then you're treated. So I learned a lot from people thinking that's what I had, which I don't fault
Hmm.
anybody. It's innocent enough, but I definitely learned more about type 1 growing up. It was more into my teens that I first started learning more about type 2. There was that commercial with the older guy, and I have diabetes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I learned a
Yeah.
little bit about type 2 from that. I remember years ago, a girl told me that I can cure my diabetes. And there was a documentary called 600 Pounds and Almost Dead or something like that. I don't think she's talking about what I have.
Yeah, exactly. Type 1, unfortunately, is uncurable, but definitely
Yes.
manageable, and you're thriving. What would you tell another type 1 diabetic who's like, oh, my life is in shambles. I can't exercise. I can't get in shape. What would you tell them? Because you're doing it.
I Yeah, I would tell them that nothing has to hold them back. It's all in your head because even your doctors would tell you you can do these things. I think it's scary to think about changing your entire lifestyle. If you're over the age of 12 and diagnosed type 1, dealing with that diagnosis is way harder than anything else you're going to deal with because you have to change so much. You have to change your whole life. I don't really remember not being type 1, so I think it was easier on me. My mom did most of my care as I was growing up, giving me my shots, measuring out my foods, and counting raisins. I saw her do it. And during that transition into me doing it myself, she was always right there. She used to make jokes about being my pancreas and we were a team. You got to give yourself some grace, allow yourself to fail and figure it out. For me, thinking about the process of having to figure out how to do this and do it well was so daunting that it was easier to just blame everything on, well, I can't do this because I've got this condition. Now I equate that as you're just giving up. If you're not going to do anything to better your quality of life, then you're just giving in.
Yeah, powerful, powerful. Because Jody and I were joking around. Jody's excuse used to be, "I don't have matching socks. I can't go to work out."
Gio and I were talking pre-production that you have barriers that you don't allow to be barriers. People have less powerful excuses, but they'll think of anything and everything to not even try. I think it's inspiring that you're doing it. You don't let anything get in your way. If somebody were to come to you and say, what do you want people to understand about type 1 diabetes or fitness, any stereotypes, anything that you want to smash and set the record straight, what would you say?
I guess my biggest one, and this is like my little tribute to all type 1 diabetics out there, you cannot cure type 1 diabetes. I promise you, if there was a cure, we would have it. We would be doing it. If it's, stand on your head for 12 hours a day, I would be doing it. It is different than type 2. It comes with a lot of things that are not easy to deal with sometimes. Those
Mhm.
fluctuations, it's rough. And it's not just about, oh, just check your blood sugar, because anything that can affect your mood can affect your blood sugar, your monthly cycles. If you don't sleep enough, the weather, or if you're dehydrated, it can all make your sugars go crazy. The other one that most type 1s will appreciate, I can eat that. If it's not poison, I can eat that.
So if she wants her Dunkin' after she worked out, she can manage
Exactly.
that. Speaking of working out, Jody's big into weights and CrossFit. What's your niche? What do you stick to? What do you like to do?
I really like bodybuilding. My coach, he's a bodybuilder, and I like the structure of it. I do a PPL split. I like the structure of it. I like that, you're over time you're increasing the weight you're using. Maybe I've said the word structure too many times here, but structure adds so much to my life. So being able to
Hmm.
have these structured workouts where I know what I'm doing every day. You name a day 3 months from now, I could tell you what workout I'm doing that day. Maybe not with what weight, but I could tell
Hmm.
you what I plan to do that day. So that works really. It's awesome feeling like a strong woman rather than chasing, oh, I want to be skinny. I don't want to be skinny. I want to be strong.
Yes. And so for people who may not know what a PPL split is, push pull leg, how many days a week do you work out?
So I'm typically in the gym every single day. My rest days, I focus on just cardio, like maybe a little elliptical and walking. Mondays are arms and shoulders. Tuesdays are rest day. Wednesdays, legs. Thursday is chest and triceps. Friday is back and biceps. Saturday is leg day number 2. And then Sunday is another rest day.
What's your favorite exercise? And what do you
Oh, yeah.
hate the most?
I probably love and hate days equally. Even the exercises that I hate them because I know how powerful they are. I love the leg press. That's where I get my
Okay.
highest records. People make fun of me. I don't count the weight of the machine itself, only the plates that I'm putting on, because I don't want
Okay.
to do a ton of math when I'm in the gym. Right now, my record for the leg press is 810 pounds plus whatever the weight of the sled is. My long-term goal is to hit 1,000. That'll be cool, but I don't plan to get there anytime soon. Least favorite, probably Bulgarian split squats, but they work so well. Don't cut them out because they are so worth it, but they will haunt your life.
Do you do them
I
with
agree.
dumbbells or a
Yes,
bar?
doing with dumbbells.
Yeah. To me, it's burpees. Jody, yourself?
I don't do burpees.
Yeah. Nobody got time for
uh,
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely Bulgarian split squats. I'll have to agree with you on that one. Burpees, it depends. I feel like I get them so much in CrossFit that I think I'm numb to them. My
Okay.
soul leaves my body.
I remember I saw Jody at Planet Fitness one time, and she was talking about doing CrossFit, and she said that she started doing CrossFit because she just wanted to go flip a tire in some dude's garage. And I'm like, wow, that sounds fun. And then she's like, oh, you should come check it out. I'm like, no, you check it out. Sounds fun for you.
So, as a type 1 diabetic, do you eat before you work out or do you work out fasted and then eat post workout? How do you handle that?
I like to work out as early as I can. So usually I get my son on the bus and then I'm at the gym. I don't eat beforehand. I'm not a big eater in the morning. I don't like having stuff in my stomach first thing in the morning. So I wait until after I work out and then I have my big meal of protein and carbs and all that.
Mhm.
But I always have juice boxes on me just in
Okay.
case.
What's your favorite juice?
Oh, I actually have a favorite juice, the Juicy Boost brand orange tangerine juice boxes. I
Okay.
discovered that brand has the highest amount of carbs in a little box. A lot of juice
Okay.
boxes only have like 15. I'm like, nah, I went closer to
Okay.
like 30 just in case.
Yeah, I'm a big cranberry juice fan. Jody?
Okay.
So,
I would say apple.
Mhm.
Apple computer or Apple juice? No, just kidding. Let me stop.
Yes.
You talked about having a coach. Are there any future competitions in the horizon? Are you preparing for a bodybuilding show or where are we
So,
going with that?
I had hoped to do that one day. I
Mhm.
thought, and that would have been something that even if I came dead last, it would have just been really cool to say that I did it. I got talking to someone at my gym who does competitive lifting. He was going to set me up with his team, talk to people from his team and see about me training with them and joining. And then I found out that when you have a heart condition, you can't compete,
Oh,
which makes sense.
mhm.
That's nobody's fault. I'm never going to
Yeah.
fight that. They have rules in place like that for people
Hmm.
like me. So, that's just not in the cards for me. But I will root
Oh,
everybody else on who gets to do that.
look, it's about long-term health anyway, right? You're winning
Yes.
at
Yep.
life, and that's what matters. And you said you have two children,
Yes.
and mom's got to be around.
Exactly.
Tell us about the Fitbod community. How'd you find that? And I'm curious, how'd you meet Jody?
Jody and I met in a local mom group. It's like a big deal around here. I swear all the moms in this county are in this group. And they used to do annual photo shoots. That may have been
Mhm.
where we first met. Moms would donate, makeup artists would donate their time and help you with makeup, hairstylists, photographers. And it was just a day everybody would go and you'd get a free headshot and look all pretty and get to hang out without your kids for like an hour or two, meet some people from the group. I remember there was one year we had a mutual friend. That was an interesting friendship. But she knew Jody and she knew me, and we all got together
Mhm.
to make Christmas cookies. And that's kind of what's most significant to me as my first time hanging out with Jody. Jody was the one that told me about Fitbod. I
Okay.
think I mentioned how I was looking for some type of structure. She
Mhm.
had mentioned Fitbod and added me to the Fitbod group. It was like love at first sight. I'm in so many Facebook groups, even multiple fitness groups where some people are just so negative. I don't understand communities where people just want to bring each other down, especially when you've known the struggle. You know how hard it is,
Yes.
even just to get there
Yes.
every day. Why would you put people down? But the Fitbod community, it's only positive.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I'm in a spinning community, popular spinning community. Bro, they will eat you alive. I hardly ever go in there anymore.
Life is too short. Focus
That's
on
what
your
I'm saying.
gains. Focus on being positive as much as
Yep.
possible. Life is too short.
And that's what I enjoyed about the Fitbod community. And now this new community that's sponsoring the Mindful Muscle podcast, the F5 Challenge. It's all about uplifting people because we all know the struggle. And even for a person like me who's not type 1 diabetic, I know it can be a struggle. And so you
Hmm.
have that added hurdle to overcome, and you're doing it. So mad props to you and continue to encourage everybody else down that line. As we wrap up here, what goals do you have in the fitness area? You can't compete because of your
Hmm.
condition, but do you want to keep bulking? What do you want to keep doing with your fitness?
I've kind of said since I first started seeing results that I don't really know what my ultimate goals are. If I said I want to be able to lift 1,000 pounds with my bare hands, once I do that, I'm instantly on to the next thing. So I'm never content with myself. I like to shoot for my absolute best. And, if I set a goal for that and then I hit it, it's like, okay, then I guess that's not my absolute best because I still got all this time left. You know what I mean? I don't really have major goals. I like seeing the way that my body changes with the bulk and the cut phases. It's something that I'm getting really good at. Lifting is something that I'm getting really good at. But it's also like, if you drink coffee every day, what's your goal for that? It just feels good. It just helps you. And at this point, this is just part of who I am. I never thought that I would be someone that I could walk into any gym. And even if it's Jody's CrossFit gym and I've never done CrossFit before, I'm like, I know I belong because this is where I'm at and I'm checking it out and I don't feel weird about it. I'm just going to see where it goes. So, it's kind of like therapy to me. It's like
Speaking of,
therapy, but also it benefits you long term forever.
how does that affect you mentally, right? The fact that you've been able to harness this and continue to work out, how has your mental outlook looked or changed?
It's one side effect that I did not expect. I started working out. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to like my body better, and that was it. I quickly realized, I mean, a couple months in, they announced, so I started working out in August of 2020. I think it was the beginning of 2021 that they announced they were going to be closing gyms again for who knew how long. And I panicked. I bought an exercise bike, I bought kettlebells, I bought resistance bands, and I still had no clue what I was doing fitness wise, but I knew I couldn't give it up. I knew that if I stop now, I'm never going to be at this point again, because I was so driven at that point. My whole mental state is so much better, and I feel better about myself. Just
Good.
knowing
Yeah.
that I set goals for myself and then I crush them. I mean, so much in my life has only benefit from it.
Mhm. Jody, how do you track your insulin, and what are some of the tools you use to keep yourself balanced?
So my insulin pump is fantastic. The one that I use, I've heard jokes that the only people who like this insulin pump are people who have never had another brand, but it works for me. I mean, I originally was old school, like manual syringes and things like that. If this isn't the greatest, I still like it. It does a lot of the work for me. When I get a new insulin pump, I have to set one thing, your carb ratio. So that's how many units of insulin do you need to cover carbs. So for 1 unit of insulin, how many carbs is that good for? And then I've got my correction factor, which is how much will your blood sugar drop with 1 unit of insulin. So when you set that, it becomes easier for the pump, and you can set different amounts for different periods of the day and things like that. All you have to do is input what your blood sugar is and how many carbs you're eating. So if for lunch I have 30 carbs, this insulin pump is fantastic because I don't even have to send it my blood sugar. It just knows. I key in how many carbs I ate, and then it does all the calculations for me. You also set your basal rate. So in theory, with the insulin pump, if the settings are correct, I should be able to go all day and not eat anything and my sugars stay level. Now that's not always true because it's technology and technology is not
Yeah, yeah.
perfect. But with those settings, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for you. But then the newer insulin pumps have what's called auto mode, where it uses your CGM to make calculations without you telling it to make calculations, and it'll give you little bits of insulin on its own. I've been on this insulin pump for about 2 weeks, and it is awesome.
I've heard some diabetic people with diabetes, whether it's two or one, say they don't like companies like, have you heard of the company called Level, where they
No,
sell GCMs for just fitness enthusiasts? I want to do it just to track my
right,
food intake, how it plays. But right now it's too expensive for my blood monthly,
right.
right? Just being a fad. How do you feel about that? People just using it for fad purposes. Yeah.
I don't have an issue with people using a CGM for fitness. My issue is that so many diabetics all across the world don't have access to it, whether their insurance doesn't cover it, or some of the diabetic communities that I'm in online, people have talked about universal health care. And certain countries that have universal health care, you still need private insurance and able to get things like an insulin pump. So they might get their insulin for free, but using syringes and a vial of insulin is not the same as having an insulin pump. I'm not upset that people are using it for fitness. I'm upset that there are people that it could really change their life and they don't have access to it.
That makes sense. A lot of sense.
Absolutely. Maggie has an adorable little girl that I see lots of pictures of her at the
Yep.
gym. So tell me more about how your lifestyle has impacted your daughter or your son too.
She's 4. And personally, I'm weird about daycare and preschool when kids are too young to stand up for themselves. or voice if something bad happened, you know. She goes everywhere with me, which is great when I can bring her to the gym. She uses it as a jungle gym. She likes climbing on the Smith machine. She's practicing hanging upside down on the Smith machine. So she's got her own fitness goals. But sometimes she wants me to set up a bench next to me so that she can do the same things I'm doing. I guess the first time that I really stopped and felt really good about myself was she grabbed some little 1 pound dumbbells and laid on the bench and started doing exercises that she saw me doing. And she started imitating that. And she was probably about 2 then. That was my first, like, wow, she's really taking this in. Her being my daughter, I think it's so important that she's seeing me as a strong woman. The woman she spends the most time with is doing this. I'm not afraid to eat and be strong, to lift heavy, or share a space with men. I'm going to do my thing and they're going to leave me alone. Even seeing the camaraderie of other people working out, joking around, everybody's there with the same idea, same principles. My son is a bit less enthusiastic about exercise, but he does come with me if I tell him he has to, and gives it an honest effort. He's 13, so he wants to play Fortnite and talk to his friends. So I can't really blame him.
Mom's not cool at this age when they're
Right, can't be cool.
Not yet. They're like
Not
2
yet.
seconds away from that stage where they want to start pumping iron. So I
Yep.
have to remind my 13-year-old the same thing. He'll tell me, Mom,
Yeah.
I don't want you talking to my teachers because last year my teacher said you look jacked. I'm like, it's all fun and games until you hit that.
Yep.
I said the fact that I know how to build muscle, especially women, it's not easy for us to build muscle. So it's like,
Yep.
dude, you guys, you're being raised by strong women. You're going to be
Yep.
used to it. We can help you with your goals if you have goals.
I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. My 8-year-old likes coming in the gym. She's not consistent, but I'm not forcing her. She's 8. But she was so proud that she could do a pull-up. She could do 2, actually, full pull-ups. They are watching what we do, whether it's the father or the mother setting the example. We have to lead the way. They're going to do what you do, not what you say.
Yes.
And so that being said, not that I wish this upon your kids, but have you checked them out? Are they normal with their diabetes and stuff like that?
They have no health ailments. Type 1 diabetes, I remember hearing one time that you're more likely to get it if a sibling has it than if a parent has it. No one in my family is type 1 diabetic. I had one uncle who was type 1 diabetic, but we were related by marriage. We were not blood related. Now, my heart defect is genetic. You have a 50% chance of passing it on to any children you have. My dad had 4 kids, and I'm the one that had it. You could have the same risk and not carry the gene. You could carry the gene and not develop the heart defect. A couple years ago, I had a cardiac arrest episode in the gym with my son. I have a pacemaker, defibrillator, so it shocked me back. I was ultimately fine after that, but that kind of jump-started, I started looking into genetic testing. So first I got tested to see if, now I'm not a specialist, so I'm going to explain this the way that I understand. They have X amount of gene mutations that they can look for that they know can cause hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So they compare you to that and see if you carry any of these markers. I carry 2 genes that they know can cause cardiomyopathy, and then 1 gene that was abnormal, but it's not linked to anything yet. So, science is always evolving. So they said, don't be surprised if at some point they find out that, oh, this gene can cause this thing or whatever. So there's 3 genes that I carry that I could pass on. My daughter carries the 1 gene not linked to anything. My son has 1 of the genes that can cause hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So where I have 2, he's got 1 of the 2. So really all that means right now is that they'll want to see him every year in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital. They'll just look him over and, do an echocardiogram and see that everything looks normal. My daughter, they said they might want to see her maybe every 5 years or so, just to be sure. It's a type of defect where it doesn't typically show until puberty. I was 15 when I was diagnosed. If my son develops it, the fact that they don't show any symptoms now doesn't help me sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of times it's epigenetics. For example, my wife has celiac disease. We did genetic testing as well because we had trouble conceiving. Now we have 3 daughters. She only has 1 of the known celiac disease genes, yet she has celiac disease. I have both of them, and I don't have celiac disease. It's weird at times how things trigger and do not trigger. We're going to
Yep.
wrap up here. We've gone 49 minutes. I've enjoyed thoroughly. Give us a rallying cry for those who have health issues, but don't let it stop you. What do you tell
Yeah.
somebody?
Ultimately, I want to live a very long life, but I want to live a long life with my eyes and my feet, and I don't want to be sick for my whole life. Anybody can better their situation. I'm not saying that everybody can simply exercise and eat well and improve every aspect of their life. Some things are much more serious than that, but you're never going to be worse for eating well and exercising. Your body needs movement, your body needs water, your body needs nutrients. I promise you're never going to feel worse for going.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Mindful Muscle podcast. Jody, Maggie, thank you for a wonderful episode.